Hi, this is Ian Wright, and this is part 2 of an introduction to meditation. And this one we're going to call the 3 tenets of mindfulness, which is something that's very popular these days, but it has its roots a long time ago. Mindfulness practices came kind of as threads through Hindu and Taoist cultures, but they really kind of gained grip in Buddhism, and Buddhism really perfected this concept of mindfulness that we're going to talk to, and subsequently through practices like Vipassana and mindfulness-based stress reduction, etc., which has become quite popular these days with. And we're just going to cover the kind of 3 important elements of that as a kind of introduction to basic meditation. And it's helpful stuff and it's practical stuff, and it's really important when we're developing our idea of neutral. So again, with last time, I'm going to talk through the basic concepts and then we'll just go into a meditation. So what we have to recognize and understand is that we as humans are going to have thoughts. Our minds are very active, and that's part of the difficulty. We're going to have feelings, and that's things. When we're sitting trying to meditate, we're going to have feelings. Our body's going to feel tight, uncomfortable. We're surrounded by a plethora of feelings, and feelings can be emotions, but actually feelings are body feelings and things that you feel through your body. Internally, interoception is this concept of how we feel our internal body. Discomfort, pain, hunger, our organs, actually. Just this quality of how we feel in ourselves, which is a subtle makeup of how our nerves feed back our sense to our brain, that gives us this kind of tonal quality as to how we're actually feeling moment to moment. And I'll talk about that a lot later because it's a very important subject to me. So we have thoughts, we have feelings, and we have emotions. And the important part about it is what we do with those. And that's a really important element to this kind of practices of mindfulness. So these 3 elements, 3 tenets of what we do with these thoughts, feelings, and emotions is what concerns us here. Okay, so number 1, the first thing that we look at is actually we have to accept that we have thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And it's very interesting because what we tend to do when we're trying to meditate, or we're trying to be calm, or we're trying to do something, is we tend to fight that. We tend to judge it. We tend to not accept that we are having these thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And very simply, if we actually accept that we are going to have thoughts, feelings, and emotions, it softens our brain. Our brains literally soften and can breathe a little bit and take us a little bit more on that pathway towards a neutral state, which we talked about last time. Now, from accepting, we go to part 2. And part 2 is allowing. So we're sitting quietly, we're concentrating on the softness of our breathing, and we allow any thoughts, any feelings, and any emotions to arrive, to come up. So a thought will come up, I've got to pick up the kids from school or whatever it is, and then you just allow it pass. Like also the Buddhists talk about that clouds across your blue sky. The thoughts, feelings, and emotions are clouds. The sky is blue and clear. And actually the sky and blue is our mind, and the thoughts, feelings, emotions are just patterns and stories that come across that. But behind that, it's clear. So we fully allow any thoughts, any feelings, any emotions to arise and to fall away. And that's really important. If you can allow it, it totally softens it. It absolutely frees your mind. Don't attach, don't start considering them, thinking about them, and trying to process them. Just watch them as thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Oh, that's a thought. That's a feeling. That's fine. That's an emotion. A little bit of sadness or a little bit of something passing through. But it's not who I am. I am not the thought, the feeling, or the emotion. It is something that's arising and passing away. And then we come to part 3, which is where we just observe. It's just a step on from allowing. So we just become the observer to our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. We're not attached to them. We're just watching them. And it's beautiful, actually. And it's an important part, actually, of that you can take into day-to-day life, is just observing things. Yeah? Meaning that you are not necessarily being affected by them. You're just observing these things as they come up and they go. And that's beautiful. When we start to just observe our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, it can bring us very strongly into this place of quiet, neutral, and take us into a meditative space, which is absolutely lovely. The observing and the observer as a meditation process has some interesting elements to it, which we're going to develop later on in this beginner series. So as we accept, as we allow, and as we observe our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, we can start to get a sense of this movement in our body, in our brain, that produces these thoughts and these feelings and these emotions. And we start to just observe that, this motion, this movement. It's not part of us, it's just a movement that passes through us, and it's fine. But we're still the same. We're okay underneath that. And as we come to perfect this technique and get really good at it, it can take us very quickly into a deep state of quiet neutral, where we can go on to do a variety of different meditative practices. So let's just try that for a few minutes and get a sense of quiet. In fact, as soon as you kind of tune into the softness in your breathing, then what immediately seems to happen, of course, is these thoughts, feelings, and emotions come up. And so then you practice this accepting, allowing it, and finally coming to observe it. And they'll keep coming, the thoughts, normally for a few minutes, and they'll persist. It depends on what state of mind you're in. If you're in an agitated state, it can take a while. But again, the more you can fully accept and allow, the quicker it'll get to quietness. Because after a while, what will happen, these thoughts and feelings will just soften enough until there's gaps. And these quiet gaps are where stillness can come in. And as you carry on with this, your mind tends to naturally quiet. And it's just the most clever trick, because it's actually by allowing it and accepting can the mind get quiet. It's quite the opposite to what we're taught. So as we start to observe, there are more gaps in the clouds. Things get more quiet. And suddenly, maybe the sun comes out, there's blue sky. But even in the blue sky, an occasional thought, feeling, or emotion, or whatever can come up, or this motion behind them. Again, practice the same thing. Allow it, observe it, and soon enough it'll quieten down again. And it can get quite still and quite peaceful and quite tranquil. And just carry on with that practice as long as you need to. And as with all practices, practice it. You can practice it when you're washing the dishes or driving, actually. And as your relationship to observing and not attaching develops, it gets easier. These practices get easier the more you do them. And it's a beautiful starting point for what we're going to come to. I wish you well.